Thanks everyone for joining us today. As usual, Sylvia's going to present for about 30 minutes, I think. So if any of you have any questions, please can you post them on the chat function or ask them at the end. We are recording the webinar as usual, so if you don't want to be seen, just turn your screen off. And so I'm going to introduce Silvia. She's a partner at Moore Kingston Smith, who are one of our patrons. And she's going to talk to you about strategies to assist you with creating your business development plans post-coronavirus. So over to you, Silvia.
Thank you. Thanks, Alison. Okay, yes, right. Well, I've got a lot to cover. I have a lot of slides, so some of them I will whistle through, but you will have the slides available afterwards so you can have a look at some of the detail. What I want to do is to do an overview of presenting a business development plan for your business that will take you through this post-coronavirus period. So let me see if my technology works. Oh, let's get rid of that picture. Okay, so just as a little bit of a background to this, we all went into what I would call the survival phase when the lockdown first came. It's really important not to get stuck in that phase. So looking at the, as we were just talking about, the short-term issues and the help that's there. The economic impact of the COVID virus is going to be huge. That's one thing that we know. Things are going to change. The economy is going to take years to recover. That doesn't necessarily mean that your business has to languish around in the survival phase or the recovery phase either. And I think that everybody who's probably on this call wants to get through those phases and go into the growth and the thriving part of it. But we do need a small dose of realism, and we have to accept that some businesses are not going to survive this. They were maybe struggling before, and if they were struggling before, they're probably going to have an even worse time now. And so whilst I am usually on the up, and you will know throughout all of this I'll be very positive, it is important to recognise that some won't survive. But that in itself is a positive, because it means if you're one of the stronger entities, there's an opportunity there for you, but only if you plan. And as the heading on this says, the crisis rewards those who take swift action. It doesn't mean any action, but it means action. So being very clear about what you want to do to get through the survival phase, which I think probably all of us have done in the first few months. Now in the recovery phase is the time when you plan for going forward. So, change, it brings opportunity. Well, it does present itself, and where we've got these seismic changes coming through in our economy, and the way that the world consumes everything, services and products, it's important to be very clear about where you are, but also to have, as I say, some of that realism. I'm getting that out of the way at the beginning. So it's how you react in this time that will determine where you're going to land. These are the things to remember. There is going to be some pain. So whether it's about making redundancies or it's changing what you're doing, there is going to be some pain. Accept that. Move through it. The changes are going to have to come in, and you're going to have to implement those. You will have so many pressures on your time. You need to be able to prioritize what you're doing with your time. That's going to be one of the hardest. It's one of the hardest I find. And I can preach as much of this to everybody else. I still find it really hard to find the time to do the things that are really key. But the way that I do it is to have a plan, and I monitor it, and I hold myself to account, and I hold my team to account, and we know what we're trying to do. And some of those opportunities may be wide-ranging, so it isn't just about looking at what you're doing now and how you can do what you're doing now differently. It might be about broadening your product lines, service lines, new markets, maybe new channels to markets. That's one of the things that we've seen with lots of clients. Relationships with clients, we've seen those change quite a lot, where we're all in this together. There's that kind of camaraderie, so deepening some of those relationships, and also alliances, so making sure that you have the right alliances. They might be different from what you would have had before. It's all about building your market share, and as I said before, some people won't have survived, some of their businesses won't, so there is an opportunity there. If you are slow to react, then you may lose some of those opportunities, but equally you don't want to just jump into something without actually planning for it. So I always say to my clients, don't bury your head in the sand, accept what's going to have to come from this and start to plan and give yourself the best opportunity. I'm coming up with a very busy slide here, and I apologise, but when you come back and look at this later, I wanted to squash everything onto one slide so that you could see it. So I'm working with clients. I've trained as an auditor and I still do audits. They're very interesting. But what's more interesting is doing some business planning with people. Now, one of the things that we use, and there's lots of different systems that you can use, but Moore Kingston Smith uses its MKS 360, which means looking at the whole of your business. And that's what businesses need to do at the moment. Look at the whole of the business, look at the highs and lows. You'd be really quite surprised that a lot of SMEs will do this and they will come out of it having looked at their people. I won't read the slide because I know I've got some time to make up. You've got people and operations, you've got your finance, your strategy and your clients to look at. And they will often rank themselves. They already know where they're not doing very well. Or I'm not telling anybody that. I will ask them some strategic questions, but they will rank themselves. And you can see that all this comes together to make your vision and your objectives for your business. On the right of the screen, I think it'd be on your right. Yes, you're not the other way around. On the right of your screen, you'll see this graph that I plot for them. And as I say, they already know where they're not doing very well. Surprisingly, it's often business development which is noted as being, well, we're actually not very good at business development. And it's about understanding why they're not good at it. And when you come through that and you ask them what they're actually doing, how proactive they're being with it, you come up with the fact that people want to be good at business development because they want their business to move forward. They just don't know how to do it. So let's have a look at how you break it down. Oh, I put this in. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but one of our offices who deals a lot with media companies did a survey, and this was just before COVID. And they talked about how they had some survivors and thrivers in that area. The top 10 strategies used by the businesses that were the most successful are listed out. And again, I'm not going to read them, but 6 out of 10 of those are around business development. They are very clear about how they develop their business. So again, it was just giving a little bit of an insight. It's quite interesting if you go back and read some of the things that's a particular sector, but it is typical. So let's have a look. Let me get my notes because otherwise I miss out some of the key points I wanted to make. So when I'm talking to clients about business development, often I'll do that project with them. We'll highlight that BD is something that they know that they're weak at. They don't quite know where to start. It breaks down very simply into 4 areas. The first one is looking at how you're generating new business opportunities. And that's going to be really key now where we have this change in our environment. The second is not just generating the business opportunities, because that's great. Conversion into actually somebody who's going to pay you some money, totally key. The third one is how are you looking at pricing and your profitability? I'm an accountant, of course I was going to say that. And then finally, how are you dealing with your current clients? Because whilst you can put a lot of emphasis into gaining clients, don't forget your current clients are important too. Are you doing similar things with them to make sure you get the most out of them? That's easy for me to put on a screen. My clients challenge me a lot and say, well, how does that actually break down in practice? What do you really mean on the first step? So I have this little picture which I show them. And I'm going to whiz through it. There's going to be a lot more detail on the slides, so I am aware of the time that's ticking away. So there's 2 parts, well, there's 3 parts, but 2 parts I'm going to start with. The origination. So how do we actually get those leads? Now, this is key. This is absolutely critical. Post-COVID, we know that lots of things have changed. We need to understand how we're going to bubble up those opportunities for us. And then after that, how do we make sure we make the most of those opportunities? You would be really surprised that there's a lot of businesses that don't actually have a sales process. It just magically happens, doesn't it? Somebody just comes. Well, yes and no, it doesn't. So let's have a look at origination. So there's 3 parts to that, and I think I've broken it down. Let me just see if this is right. Okay, so origination, let me just go. So this is ensuring that you generate more new business opportunities. Let's look at the practical side of that. We have a target market, we have our value proposition, and then marketing. Now, a lot of my clients will leap immediately into marketing. Let me talk about collateral. What videos can we do? What can we send out? Well, if you actually look at this, you need to make sure that your marketing speaks to your target market and your value proposition. And nothing that I say, and this is true in life actually generally, nothing I say is the, sort of amazing engineering and thought process. It's plain, simple, honest understanding of what you're doing. You need to understand, it's simple, target market first of all. Think about your value proposition is what are you doing, and then your marketing. So by looking at it in this way, it does stop clients leaping into that let's get the collateral and let's get our logo designed first of all. So first of all, we're looking at the target market. So what do I mean? Well, examine your business now. Where's the demand likely to come from post-COVID-19? Now, it could be the same as it was before, but is it? Are there various areas which you're going to see growth in, or you're starting to see some of those green shoots? Or are there somewhere it's very clear that there's been a decline and that's not going to work? Typically, if we want to give a current example, you might talk about restaurants. So let's be honest, when everything closed down, they stopped. I'm not going to say it's been an easy time for restaurants or anything, or cafes at all. But we saw a lot of them changing and saying, well, actually, we do some takeaways. Let's just do all takeaways. And some of them are making even more money than they did before. Not many, I know that, but there have been some wonderful stories. So have a look at your market. It may have changed. I don't know, but you need to test that. And are those trends going to be temporary or permanent? So that may focus how you market to them. If it's a temporary one, you need to act very quickly and take advantage of it, but maybe not put a huge investment into it. If it's something that's going to be permanent, you may approach that very differently. And with that information that you have, and I've got a lot of tools to actually help you do that in a systematic way. And a lot of what I'm talking about isn't rocket science, but it is about systematically working through it. You redefine your target market. Depending on what you get from that, will it involve you then in your marketing when we come to that. So let's assume that you've gone through that process with your team and you've understood where your market really sits now. It may have shifted slightly. Let's have a look at what your next point. Oh, yes, sorry, I've got 2 slides on this. What that looks like, sorry, I'm just going to leap ahead. I'm mindful I'm going to run out of time. So when you're doing that, you might want to give yourself a visual sort of idea as to what that is. So you can see at the side here, you've got market attractiveness. So that's about the size of the market or the profit margins that you perceive you can make from that market. And across the top, we've got your competitive position. Do you have a large market share of it already, or is your brand really well known? Do you have a lot of market knowledge? Do people see you as the go-to person? You can rank it along that scale, and it gives you a visual as to where your target market is actually sitting. And I've got a little example, I think, here. So here, this entity, this business, has looked at it and said, well, there's a really highly attractive market. Let's say it's very profitable for us. We have some involvement in it, but we haven't really gone into it hugely. In that scenario, the things that you're going to be looking at for your marketing campaign are challenging for the leadership. You'll be looking at what you've already got as your strengths and having a look at what your real weaknesses are and bolstering those up. So you're investing in that. It's worthwhile investing in it because it's got a high margin, for example, and you're already slightly into that market. Compare and contrast with this one, which I'll go through very quickly, has a medium attractiveness. I'm hoping nobody really concentrates on something that has low market attractiveness for you. But you're saying, well, actually, it makes us a reasonable return. We're pretty weak in that area, though. We don't really offer it very much. Now, what it might be in that case is it's something that's added on to your main product that you provide or your main service. So you have to provide it. You don't get a huge return on it, but you need to provide it as part of your overall offering. In that case, you might look at, as I've put in here, rationalising the operation, or you might outsource it to somebody else and white label it so that you're still offering it, but you're not putting all of your effort into it. So challenge yourself. Lots of tools around how you challenge yourself to find out where your market should be. Target market, let's assume you've got a good idea now where you're with that. Hugely important. So although I'm rushing over it, I'd like to spend sort of half an hour on target markets. Moving on to the proposition. So it's a fancy way, when we're talking about it, of saying, what do you do? Can you articulate what you do? Because if you can't articulate very clearly and succinctly what it is you do and why I should come and buy your product or your service from you, chances are that nobody else in the market really knows why they buy from you. And if you're in that situation, you're relying on a very fragile relationship. So have a look at your proposition. Does it speak to this redefined target market that you have? Is it actually speaking their language? Is it hitting the pain points that that market has? And do you need, therefore, to slightly reposition yourself? I say slightly, it might be a lot, I don't know. But it's whatever your market is that you've defined, how are you talking about yourself and where are you positioning yourself? Let me just give you another little image. And again, I've got lots of tools on this. When you're talking about value proposition, there's 5 credentials that you need to make sure that you've got in the right place. credentials, I picked up the word, there's 5 areas. You need to look at the value. So think about money side of it, because that is going to come into it. What's the value of what you're presenting? Can you articulate that? What are the benefits? What's the upside of it? So if we think about that, you might think of, I don't know, skincare products that they show on the television. They are always very keen to show you that there's not going to be any wrinkles after you've used that product once. I've got to be honest, it's a lie, but I still buy into it. So they must be selling it pretty well. What's your unique selling point? Have you got one? Is there one that you can say, yes, other people do this, but you know what? We do it in this way, and it's so wonderful. If you've got one of those, that's going to be really important for you. And I'm saying one, you may have several strands to your business, so you may need these value propositions, 3 or 4 of them for whatever you're providing. What are the features? Are you able to articulate those? And if I'm coming along as a customer, can I see them quite clearly? I can understand what you're offering. Is there clarity? And then credentials, that's around testimonials. Have you got scientific evidence that backs it up? Credentials are really often about third parties saying nice things about you. And to be blunt with you, third parties can often say much nicer things about you than you can say about yourself and still have credibility with it. So it's always good to have the credentials that you can get. That actually means that you're going to enable your sales wins to increase. You'll be able to charge premium prices, potentially, and you'll get loyalty, and that's really important. So value proposition, your USP, what makes you you, if you can articulate that in a way that speaks to your target market, which remember you have just spent time identifying, will give you the start to your business development plan. And what you're trying to do, I have lots of visuals here, you can see I've cut this down from big presentations. What you're really trying to do is get that sweet spot. So your target market might be quite large, your value proposition could cover a lot of different areas. But what you want to do is have this overlap, where exactly what you're saying applies exactly and speaks directly to the market that you're trying to sell to. Obviously, the bigger you can make that target market, the better, because that gives you a better chance. It might completely overlap, I guess, if you have a very, very specific sales program. But this is what you're trying to do, and that's where you should be focusing. Once you have that visual and that understanding in your mind, what comes next, which is moving on to your sales and your marketing rather, is going to be easier. Because now your marketing knows what it's actually targeting. It knows the market, it knows what to say. And as you can see, jumping straight into your marketing without actually going through that process might sound like you're having activity, which is what I was trying to push you to do at the beginning. You want to make sure that activity actually focuses you onto the right points. Okay, so you've got your framework now, you understand who you're selling to, you understand how they're going to hear you, and your marketing actually aligns with it. And so you're starting to generate more business opportunities, which is great, but not really that great, because actually they haven't paid you any money yet, and the whole point of this, and I am a bit blunt about this because I am an accountant and I like to talk about money, so until we've converted those opportunities into something, all of this has been an academic exercise. So I bolstered you up and I pulled you down and said, if you stop here, you might as well have saved your time. So let's say you've got some new business opportunities. How are you going to make sure that you convert the majority of those, or the maximum amount that you can? So it's really key, this part as well. So you need to qualify those leads that are coming through, and then you need to have a sales process. Again, not rocket science, but actually until somebody says it to you, you suddenly go, I don't know whether I do that. So what does she mean about qualification? Okay, let me tell you what she means. How do you know somebody comes to you and wants to buy a service from you? They've looked at, they're from your target market, and they've looked at your value proposition and your collateral has been great. Should you be taking them on as a client? Now, if you're selling them a product, then probably yes, because actually if they want to buy your product, you probably want to sell it. It gets a little bit more important for you to look if it's an ongoing relationship that you're going to have, perhaps with service provision. So how do you qualify them? Have you got a scoring process? How do you prioritize them? Because if you've got your first part, your origination correct, then you're going to get loads of these coming through the door. So should you just go for them in sort of date order that they come in, a little bit like the deli counter used to be? Obviously we don't have them anymore. Do you just take them as they come through, or do you prioritize? Are all potential sales equal? And the answer to that is probably no. And so you need some sort of a process that you can qualify. In for you. Now, this is quite a complicated one. And I put it in because it was one that one of my clients has used. It's not the best way to just cut and paste it. It's quite detailed. You don't have to make it this detailed, but it gives you some ideas. So if you've got lots of opportunities coming through, you might say, well, I need some way to know which ones I should go for. So have a look. Have we got the right resources for it? I won't go through all of these. Are they the right profile for us? Are they the ones, the sort of clients that we want to have? How profitable is it? Are they actually wanting to do a lot of business with us, but on a very, very low margin? I'm going to talk about margins in a moment. You know, what's the process that they require us to go through? What's the risk of us doing this? Now, you'll come up with all the criteria. So the way to do this is to think about what's your ideal client. You may take your very best client that you have at the moment and say, what are the elements when I look at them that makes them my best client? You know, is it geographical location? Is it the frequency of orders? Is it the loyalty? Is it that they've referred us to other people? I don't know. You might have 3 or 4 items there. This client sort of went to town, as you can see, and had all sorts of things. But have some sort of matrix that you put together, because this then takes it into a different realm that you can start to say, I'm going to qualify them. Do they tick all of the boxes that I need for my ongoing client? Because the longevity of a client is really important. That's your qualification. And again, I'm going to say I've got lots and lots of tools that I can help you actually come up with a process. The processes that work are the ones that are meaningful. So they're not just tick boxes. They are usually short, and I'll be honest, a lot shorter than the one I showed you there. This was somebody who was looking at very big projects, so they didn't get that many opportunities. They were large projects. You want one that you can actually de-skill as well. So if you can get team members to do some of that work for you, so something that's simple and easy to do. Conversion. So let's say you've qualified and you may have cut out some of the opportunities that came through. How are we now going to get all of those clients which you've looked at? They're in your target market, they understand what you do, they've come to you, you've qualified them. Now how are we going to convert them? Because this is the final step before they actually start to convert into pounds. So really, really key. So how did you convert your very best clients? Have a look at how that worked. Can you actually take some nuggets out of that? Have you got a sales process? And that's a really important thing, because you will be surprised at how many, and I have to say, quite successful companies anyway, how did they actually convert? Now, the majority of the very successful ones do have a very clear sales process that is actually written down and everybody works to it and understands. But those that don't, to start putting that in place, look at how you've got your current clients and how you keep those. You need it to be efficient. So don't lose any of those opportunities. You know, somewhere they should be written down. And when I say written down, it might be on the computer these days. This is going to be really key, because where we're working remotely, whilst we're still all working together, we are remote. You can't just lean over and talk to Bob over here and make sure that he's picked up that lead which you intended to, but you didn't do it. So there's got to be a process in there. So this conversion bit, I'm talking to a lot of clients about putting in much more robust systems, because if you look at the line here, this opportunity that you've got has come through quite a lot of the traps and the gates and has come through. So we're thinking by the time they get to conversion, you really want this client. And so dropping them at this point with an unforced error, using a tennis analogy, again, no tennis, gosh, lots of things we're missing. But an unforced error is bad. If you lose it in a pitch over something, that's something you can learn from. But if you drop it and lose it, that's almost unforgivable. So look at, really, if you do nothing else, I would say put it in place a sales process now, so that one that actually fits how we're working remotely or the new work at the moment. And one of the things that you might find during that process is price pressure. I think particularly now we're seeing some pushback from clients. There's quite a lot of businesses looking to save their cash and looking for some sort of support from their suppliers. Offering discounts is a great way to do it, or is it? So let's have a look. If you look at I won't go through the numbers. If you have a look at the numbers, giving a small discount can actually have a huge impact on your margins and your profits at the end of the day. If you know that, that's fine and you go ahead with it. But be very careful about discounts that are just given unilaterally to get an account or to keep an account. It may be something that you have to do, but make sure it is something that you understand what it really means. Now, some of the things that you could do, because yes, you've got to react if somebody's pushing you, I understand that. Be innovative, offer some other discounts or maybe a different scope, maybe throwing something extra in that isn't really going to be a huge issue for you. Rebates are good, because that's saying you'll get a rebate if you order more with me. or you buy more from me, that might be good because you're pulling in at least some extra money on that. Bulk buying is a similar sort of thing, but that's saying bulk order up front with me now. Subscription model is nice because often people forget to cancel subscriptions, as we all know. Dynamic pricing is a good one as well. Now, maybe not everybody can do that, but if you've got products, we see it a lot on e-commerce. So a good example of that is at Christmas, that favourite toy suddenly starts to go up in price because it's of the moment, and during summer that whatever it was has gone down in price. It's a lot more, there's a lot more that goes behind that. There's a lot of analytics that go behind moving something by 2 or 3p on an e-commerce site can have a huge difference on the flow that comes through. So when somebody wants to move some of their product, they just drop it by a few pence. That pushes them up the rankings, but things like that. So dynamic pricing is a whole world that you can look at in itself, but it's about preserving margin or pushing product that you need to move. If you need to get cash in, you might be dynamic with your pricing. I would always say caveats on that. Make sure there's an end point to it. Don't just give a discount on something and just let it rumble on for years. Give it for a period of time. It gives you an opportunity. You can renegotiate it, but at least it will come to an end. Don't get tied into something that's in there forever. I'm mindful of the time. I might go a few minutes over. I am coming to it. The other thing I would actually say as well is have a look at your current accounts. I wanted to get to this because this is really key. It costs a huge amount, you can see with that sales process, to bring your customers in and to get them. But once you've got one, it's really important that you don't forget them. It's not like, oh, they're in the basket, I'll leave them and I'll concentrate on my new clients. I think banks, I'm sorry if I'm insulting any bankers here, banks often do that. They offer great rates, or they offer something to new people coming in or sign up with us. And you think, well, I've sort of been with you for 15 years. So it is important to make sure you look after your current clients. So what do I mean about that? I mean, have an active management program in place, something that makes you phone them, not because you have to, because you need another order, but just keeping in touch with them. So you see the little logo in the bottom there. I've talked about maintaining it and securing that relationship. And in doing so, you often find that you'll grow that relationship. Sometimes just having those little discussions. I have got a client that told me an interesting anecdote. I'm not sure that they will always be this good, but simply by having this program in place where they had different people making touch points with their client, who was very happy with them and was an excellent client, they suddenly said to them, oh, actually I think they were doing packaged foods. It was a food provider. They said, I didn't realise you did children's snacks as well. Oh gosh, oh, do you want to give me some details about that? So it was out there. They were discussing things about all sorts of stuff that they were dealing with at the current time. And some of the stuff around the edge of it, which they could also provide, hadn't really been touched on because this was such a good client and they were just keeping them happy. So this account management program was about just introducing gently different alternatives that would come in. Again, you know, I'm going to say I've got some programs that you can work through. It's about bringing your team in and making them understand what's available. So sometimes you'll find as your organisation grows, just as a last couple of points, your team don't know everything that you do, and that's a shame because they need to be able to spot the opportunities. And if you've got that program in place, it's something that can come forward. I've rushed through that. There's so much that's so important to do. So I'm going to give you 7 takeaways. Okay. Act fast. So do take some action. It's really important that you take this action now. But don't just rush into something and take any action. I'm an accountant, I'm an auditor, so I'm going to be measured on this. So what I would say is go back and define your market. It may be that you say it's still the same market, which is fine. You're moving forward from a position of knowledge. Evaluate where you're going to focus. So look at your competitive advantage now. Have a think about that. Develop that proposition so that it's speaking to the market that you've defined. Look at your sales process. Remember that line that we had of your business development plan that you're creating. If somebody gets right to that end bit and you drop them because you don't have the right sales process in for how you're working now, that's a disgrace. You've just wasted all of your time. Make sure you monitor your conversion rates and challenge yourself on where you did well and where you didn't do well. Sometimes where you failed, it is useful for you to go back and ask the question, why did we not get it? One of the things I didn't mention that is so important, and I'm so sorry, is the voice of the customer, about seeking that independent feedback. So in your developing your focus and developing your competitive advantage and your proposition, seek some feedback. Get feedback from yourself, from internally as well, from people that you work with. But that voice of the customer is really important to you because that's what they're seeing as opposed to what you're saying. Innovative pricing, yes, we're probably all going to have to do a little bit of that, but remember the impact that it will have on your profit and make sure you understand that fully. And as I said, always try to have an end point to some of those offers that you have on the innovative pricing. And don't forget your existing customers and clients. It's really hard to get them. You can see all of the effort that you put there. Don't just assume they're in the basket, because just to be honest with you, exactly what you're doing now about your business development, your competitor is doing exactly the same. So they're looking at the clients that are yours and they're going to come with to them with new propositions. So don't lose them because you forgot about them. A real whistle-stop tour, I hope that it has actually had some nuggets that you've gone, oh, you know, we ought to do that. I've got lots of tools, I've got lots of feedback. It was really meant to just be a highlight as to the things that you should be thinking about now. If you need some more help, then I'm very happy to help you and to give you some tools to help you get through that process.
That's great. Thank you, Silvia. Wow.
Just about on time.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. So I'm going to throw that open for any questions. We have got a comment there from Adam. Adam, do you want to talk us through that, or shall I read that out?
No, I'm fine to just talk you through it. I mean, we do a lot of public sector procurement for NHS trusts and councils and the like. And in their procurement, they split a lot of it between quality and price. And actually the price is weighted at 60% of it. And you kind of go, well, how important is the quality bit if you weight in that? But just by reducing prices by 1 or 2%, because they then use multipliers on it, exactly as you've said in terms of profit margin, dropping by 1% actually scores you massively high without really offering that much of a discount. So in public sector procurement, that's a really good trick to be aware of.
And it is important to run those numbers because sometimes, as you say, it's the right thing to do is to drop it. Other times it can be absolutely earth-crushingly bad and you ruin your entire business model. And let's be honest, if you're offering a discount to somebody, that often gets out into the market and suddenly you've changed your entire model. So I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying do it with a mind to what the end product is, you know, what the end result is, and the reason as to why you're doing it. And yes, I agree with you. You know, good luck with public sector quotes because they are really hard to get.
It's
very hard.
Actually, can I ask you a question, Silvia? So what would you recommend if someone's working on their own? How can that?
Okay, yeah, it's really hard if you're on your own. I mean, you're never wrong, obviously, so that's the upside, but, or you're always wrong, that's the point. If you're on your own, I would say this is actually even more important. So follow that procedure because it is very easy to just jump about, and I certainly do that, and I get pulled back into place by these. So brainstorming is really good. So when you're working in a team, you can get other people's ideas about the target market or your value proposition. On your own, you're going to have to rely on your own thoughts. Brainstorming as a specific activity, and I think I've done a short video on how you brainstorm at some point, which I'll get up on our website. So it is an actual tool that you can use, and you capture all of your ideas without thinking, oh no, that one's way outside or whatever. Just capture all those ideas. You'll be really surprised at what you come up with and the strands that you get. Come away from it, then walk back, and that's almost like you've had your team get together. But yeah, it's really hard if you're on your own. Use brainstorming and use some of those systems that I put in place to actually tie you into place. You need to do it because you do need efficient systems more than ever. On your own, it's all down to you. So make sure you're slick, you know what you're talking about, you know who you're targeting. That target that I had with the arrow in it, that becomes really important because you don't have any resource to waste on things that aren't within your target market or customers that aren't going to be good for you. You need to be able to shave that down very quickly and very succinctly and get through to the end. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but yes, it's hard. Use the system.
Thanks, Silvia. Andrea's just popped a question in here about sharing the slides, which I can confirm we are going to do.
Yes,
yeah.
There's lots of information on there, and we're sharing them, which is why I wanted to have them in there, just to sort of put them in their placement as to the marketing development plan.
Yeah. She says that your qualification and conversion table is very interesting. So
yeah, you maybe don't want to have one that large, I'll be honest with you, but you might do, it depends. That one was taken from someone who has very few contracts that they deal with, but they're very big, and so they needed to qualify very specifically on that.
And you mentioned the voice of the customer. What would that entail exactly?
Okay, sorry, I was rushing through and I really meant to put it, it's really important. I'm glad that reminder was at the end. So voice of the customer is about finding out what people hear that you're doing, or what people see of you. So it's going to your customers and your clients and understanding what your marketing, what your proposition, the way that you place your entity within the system, how it's being received. Now, it can be quite painful, and some people are very worried about doing it. Some have done it themselves. Some of my clients have done it. I've done it for some people, and there are actual businesses that do this. So it's actually going to a customer with a set of ideas, questions rather, and asking them their ideas from that. So saying, you know, do you feel that our service is good? Some of it will be just very perfunctory sort of answers. What's really important on that voice of the customer is the add-ons that they give, the little anecdotes, the bits and pieces, the little vignettes of their experience of working with you. Now, some of it is lovely because they say nice things, and then some of it you go, that's not true. So you need to get over that, get past that really quickly, and then go back and say, what made them say that? Because that so wasn't what we meant. And they are the really important ones. That will then inform you as to what your value proposition needs to be. Because if someone's saying they're really great at X, Y, Z, I wish they were more, I don't know, they made themselves more available, I wish they did more of X, Y, whatever it is, you know that you need to build that in if that's what your good customers are asking. It's hard to do yourself because sometimes they don't want to say anything nasty to you because they actually like you and they don't mind the surface, but you know, they go somewhere else for something. So getting somebody else to do it. So either bringing in another business, or you can use your accountant or whatever just to do it as a summary. Be prepared, because whatever you think you know they're going to say, there will be one or two of them that just come with something that just sideswipes you and you go, but we don't do that. You know, it is funny, it's really informative, and when you're drawing up your marketing plan, you're going to use those bits that come out of there. And you might get some testimonials in there as well, so there's a duality to it. So it's not all bad, but listen for the things that you weren't expecting would be my point, because that's the great learnings in it.
Great, thank you. Okay, do we have any last questions? I've got a couple of comments here, Sylvia. So Trevor says, thanks, very well presented, and it makes good sense, so worth attending. So thank you, Trevor, for that. And Maxine, and Maxine says, great presentation, good to step back and make sure you're not missing anything. So yeah, that's I think that's it for now. I haven't got any other questions in the chat.
I think Nigel's put his hand up.
Sorry, Nigel, can't see you there. Sorry. Do you want to?
Hi, Sylvia. Yeah, I just wondered to what extent you find clients, when you've been through this process with them, actually do it, and how do you go about working further with clients who either won't or just don't do the things that your sessions have agreed with them that they should do?
So clients will tend to do it because we have bolted onto the end of this the holding them to account, and so this isn't something that you just do and it's done. Good, we can put it, you know, we can put our plan in the bottom drawer of our desk and it's finished. This has a sort of, it's part of the life of the business. So going back to one of the earlier slides where I showed you the strategy part of it, the business development bit is the bit I pulled out of it, but it fits in whole with the strategy. So I go to board meetings, we hold one another to account. I have to turn up to the board meeting, I have to come with some ideas as well, but they have to have done what they were going to do. And once you start to see, so that first phase is hard, I agree with you. There's often lots of good intention, and then the noise of everyday life gets in the way and it gets dropped. So I know I know that 99% of what gets done is done in the morning before the meeting in the afternoon that I'm coming in to see them. I know that. We all know that. It's an open secret around the table, but it does get done. And so we move forward. And once you start to get some of those incremental changes that are coming through, oh, our conversion is better, or we've got much better testimonials coming through, or it might be around finance function, it might be around their people engagement, or whatever it is that we're actually focusing on. Once you start to see those changes, that's when you start to get people engaging more. And peer pressure as well. So I have a plan, I'm very happy to share actually the plan, which is about allocating. And again, none of this is rocket science, but until you actually do it, what are we going to do? They're very small steps. When are we going to do it? And who? Nigel, you're going to do this by the next time we meet. We need to have that matrix drafted out, at least the first draft of it. Now, likelihood is, Nigel, that the rest of the day will get in the way, and we've got a meeting in 2 weeks' time. The morning of that meeting, or maybe the night before, you'll suddenly realise that dreadful woman is coming to our board meeting, and we've agreed that we're going to do this, so we might have an actual strategy meeting, and it will get done, and we'll discuss it, and it will move on. Once you start to see the benefits, it gets easier, but that first step is hard, so I'm not going to pretend it's easy. But the benefits are there, and if you don't do it, which is sort of the last thing I said about the existing customers, so going back to the BD, you don't do it, your competitor is going to do it, and you will lose clients from it because they will have a better strategy than you.
So it's about positive reinforcement, peer-to-pear, pressure,
basically,
responsibility.
Yeah, it is. It's holding people together. If you say you're going to do something, and it's not having big things to do, it's having small things. So you have one task, let's say Alison would have another task, Donna will have another task. You know that they're going to come. Everybody thinks everybody else is going to come with their task done. And you do all come with your task done. You will have done it in a few days beforehand. I know that happens because I do it myself. And we all do it. Everyone manages just in time, but it means it gets done. And those early steps are faltering and they are difficult, and you push forward through it. Once you start to see that whatever it was your plan, so if it was people development, or if it was around, I don't know, finance function, or it was around BD, once you start to see some of that clicking into place, then we are creatures. We go, oh, actually, that worked. We have got better credit control. Oh, we have got a better conversion rate. It sort of worked, doesn't it? And then you move forward. So small steps, accountability, and actually believing in it. Having that plan sets out what you're expected to do in advance, rather than just generally saying, well, we'll sit down next Tuesday and we'll come up with our marketing plan.
Thank you.
I don't have a magic bullet though. It's just it is just plugging away at it.
Thanks, Silvia. Okay, I think we're just about up on time now. So just one quick thing. Julie asked if you do have the link to your brainstorming video that you mentioned. So
yes, I will make sure it's still out there. It was quite an old one. I might have to redo it. My hair would have been shorter in those days, probably.
Could you send that to me, Silvia, and then I can forward it on to everybody?
Absolutely. If I can find it, I'll do it, or I'll do another. I tend to only do 2 to 3 minute videos because I know, it's quite hard to listen to my voice for 30 minutes. So you've all done really well.
No, not true at all. That was fantastic. Thank you. And I think your slides are really, packed full of useful information. So we'll put those on later. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Silvia. Thanks everyone for attending.